From day one of this administration, I honestly thought you meant it when you said you wanted to support and protect law enforcement. But then the president pardoned every single person involved in the January 6th attack. That makes your promises sound empty, especially when you say if anyone spits on a police officer, they will be held accountable. Talk to my friends. Some of them are Capitol Police officers who were there that day, and 5 of them didn't make it. They lost their lives. When people in power feel cornered by the truth, they don't stay calm. They snap. That's exactly what happened when Senator Madeleine Dean pressed Attorney General Pam Bondi, and you could see her mask of professionalism starting to slip. Friends, these officers risked everything for us. So, Attorney General, I want to ask, did you ever advise the president about the blanket pardon he issued on January 20th? What did you tell him? I never discuss private conversations or advice I give to the president, Bondi responded. Did you give him any advice, yes or no? Again, I will not talk about any discussions I've had with the president. You're just putting words in my mouth, she said. Then the chair tried to get her to answer, saying she had already answered multiple times. Now, this administration has 3 main problems: incompetence, corruption, and cruelty. Today, I'm focusing on corruption. There are 2 kinds: personal corruption and corruption in government. Attorney General, have you ever been registered as an agent for a foreign government under the Foreign Agents Registration Act? Bondi answered, I assume you mean when I briefly represented Qatar. Hold on, we're talking specifically about the anti-human trafficking work related to the World Cup. You're putting words in my mouth, she said. You want to talk about incompetence? You were the one who said Joe Biden was competent on PBS and later had to take that back. Don't insult me in public. This is rude and against committee rules. Taking personal shots while also dragging Biden is unprofessional, she snapped. So, yes or no? Were you registered as a lobbyist for Qatar? Yes, she admitted. Did you disclose that during your Senate confirmation? No, she said. That was missing from your documents. Now, President Trump recently said he would accept a $400 million airplane from Qatar because it looked better than the one he was currently using. Did you advise that this was legally okay? I will not discuss legal advice my office gives to the president, she said. But when you spoke before the Senate, you promised to ask for ethical advice. Did you recuse yourself from this issue? And about calling the president's decision because it's pretty? Excuse me, this is a Senate hearing, not a joke. You could almost feel the tension in the room when this hearing went from routine politics to something much more serious. Senator Madeleine Dean's back and forth with Attorney General Pam Bondi wasn't just a tense moment. It was a clear sign of deeper problems. This hearing showed what happens when public service runs into loyalty and when tough moral questions get blocked by something called executive privilege. Senator Madeleine Dean started off clearly shocked. How could Pam Bondi, a former prosecutor known for standing up for law and order, defend an administration that pardoned everyone involved in the January 6th attack on day 1? That wasn't just a question for show. It was a serious moral challenge. Dean spoke for many Americans who saw the violence at the Capitol, officers hurt, and people dying, and then watched as the people responsible were treated like political players instead of criminals. Her question was simple. Did you advise the president before he gave that blanket pardon? Bondi refused to answer over and over, saying things like confidentiality, privilege, and process, the usual defenses for those close to power. But every time she stayed silent, it just highlighted a bigger problem: the growing gap between what is legally allowed and what is morally right. The conversation got more intense and personal after that. Dean pushed Bondi about her past work as a lobbyist for Qatar, something a lot of people probably didn't know. Bondi admitted it, saying it was about fighting human trafficking connected to the World Cup. But Dean didn't stop there. She accused Bondi of not being honest about that during her Senate confirmation and questioned her judgment after President Trump accepted a $400 million jet from Qatar, supposedly with Bondi's legal advice. That's when things heated up. Bondi snapped back, calling Dean rude, unprofessional, and disrespectful. Suddenly, this wasn't just about papers or rules. It was about pride and power. Because in moments like this, the real question is, who gets to claim the moral high ground when the truth is hard to hear? The irony here is huge. Pam Bondi used to be known as a fighter for ethics, justice, and accountability. She was the tough prosecutor who stood up for victims and promised to protect honesty in public service. But sitting in that hearing, she sounded more like someone defending a system that changes the rules to protect its own people. This hearing wasn't really about Qatar, jets, or January 6th. It was about something even bigger: how staying silent slowly kills the truth. When every tough question is met with, "I won't discuss that," democracy starts to shrink. Silence isn't neutral. It is a tactic, one that lets those in power avoid being questioned and keeps citizens in the dark. Dean's frustration, cutting through her calm, was the voice of everyday people saying, "Enough. Enough of dodging questions. Enough of calling loyalty ethics." She wasn't asking Bondi to break the law. She was asking her to stop hiding behind it. What this moment really showed was not just corruption in the usual sense, but a deeper, quieter kind of corruption. The kind that happens when people in power forget who they are supposed to serve. Bondi's angry, defensive response told its own story. Because when power feels trapped by the truth, it doesn't give in. It fights back. This wasn't just a hearing. It was a showdown between two ideas of public service. One based on honesty and openness, the other on loyalty and protection. And every person watching should decide which kind of leadership they want. This is what oversight is for: cutting through the political spin, stripping away the surface, and showing us the real human story behind the power. Because when government stops answering questions, democracy stops working. So when all the noise dies down, remember this: being polite isn't the same as being honest. A smooth answer means nothing if it hides the truth. And silence, no matter how professional it sounds, is never a substitute for the truth. This wasn't just a clash between two women. It was a fight between two ideas: power as a privilege versus power as a responsibility. And the future of our democracy depends on which one wins. Because when holding power accountable feels like a personal attack, that's when you know the truth has become the biggest threat of all.